Hello and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansevieri.
And Amy Cornell.
And first off, we're super excited. We want to thank Joe for your latest review. Joe, we were in the green room. I just read your review to Amy. We're very excited. Thank you.
So excited. Amazing.
We're so glad that you love the show. And to all of our listeners, if you're new here, welcome. We have a lot of shows. Take a look at our backlist of shows in whatever app that you're listening to. We rarely is our content really out of date, but if anything ever gets out of date, we definitely create, we definitely do updates on shows and things like that. So we want to welcome all of our new listeners and welcome back to everyone who has been listening with us for a while. I talked to so many people who come to us from the podcast. So it's pretty amazing. And the Amazon apparently I can't talk. The Amazon Author Formula Workbook is done. I know I've said that like the last, I think 5 shows, but as an author, we all know that there's a progress to books that's weird. Like you tell people, oh, my book is done, but it's not really done, right? So
they understand.
Right. So it's going to get uploaded. I actually started the pre-order upload last week. So it's going to get uploaded probably this week and we'll put the pre-order on. So the next time that we record a show or the next show that we record, we'll have a pre-order date and all the good things and all the bonuses and all of that. So I'm very excited about that. This show is really, it's one of those things that is something that we have not covered before. And I have to tell you, it's about a guilty pleasure of mine and I think also Amy's. So we're talking today about Reddit, in particular, doing author events on Reddit. And Amy, you and I talk about Reddit a lot, just in terms of some of the research we do and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I try not to get too far down the rabbit hole because it's so easy to do on Reddit. But there's just something about the authenticity, like there's a lot of no filter feedback on Reddit and insight and opinions and things like that. So I just really appreciate the platform as a source for information and finding out things. I don't know. It just seems, I don't know what the right word is for it. But I do it for true crime. I do it for research. I do it for personal things that I like. I look up dog things like going on with my dogs, and it's just amazing how much great information and insight I've found on Reddit before.
Yeah. And I think that it is often an overlooked research tool. I mean, I like it because, even though like with any quote unquote social media site, you're always going to get people who are, where it's a little, you get some weirdos and things like that. That's kind of everywhere. It's part of being on the internet. But a lot of the information that I find on Reddit, just in terms of research, has been really, really helpful when I'm deep diving in particular topics, whether it's for personal or for the authors that we're working with. This particular strategy is something that I've read about, and it's called doing a Reddit AMA. And AMA stands for Ask Me Anything. And I was reading about this author who did who had a little known book, was just at a book launch and did an Ask Me Anything, did an AMA and had over 1 million views to that Reddit thread. And I really feel like, Reddit, you have to be careful on Reddit. So you can't be self-promotional, but Ask Me Anythings are designed to basically what the name says. So you ask the author anything. And one of the reasons that I like this is because anybody can really do this. So this author wrote a fiction book based on a nonfiction premise. And basically, the Ask Me Anything was about that premise. And then obviously she talked about the book. So it was promotional, but it wasn't really promotional, if that makes sense. Right?
Yeah.
And we are going to talk about how to get a Reddit AMA, because you could just tee up a string in under a conversation topic, um, and start something. But then there's also an AMA track within Reddit that you can email and speak to. And I have to say something, and I haven't told Amy this. I told her in the green room, like, I have a surprise for you, and we talk about this Reddit show, because in prep for this show, I wanted to do a little bit of research, and I actually found the AMA track, and I sent them an email, and they gave me my own AMA that I
Are
can
you
launch.
kidding?
Yeah, that I can launch anytime.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So,
Oh my gosh.
right. So I am, and we've done Ask Me Anything before, just like we used to do Ask Me Anything Fridays and Ask Me Anything on social media. And part of the challenge with that is always going to be the follower base, right? So if you do an Ask Me Anything, let's say you do it on your Facebook page or something, if you have a huge and robust following on Facebook, you'll probably get a lot of questions, and that's great. But the majority of us don't really have, and you also have to catch people's attention, right? Because Facebook, everything kind of scrolls past and then people miss it, et cetera. Part of the reason why I like Reddit and doing these Ask Me Anythings on Reddit is you have a massively engaged platform that really favors authenticity over polish, which is something that I think is one of the reasons why we use it so much for our deep dives and our research. I mean, don't you?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of it is that it's really not about followers. Whereas the examples that I gave you previously, so if you're doing a Facebook Ask Me Anything, or you're doing any kind of an event on Facebook and you don't have a robust following, you're going to feel like you and maybe two other people are the only person at your party. And that's normal. Like I said, unless you were a household name.
Right.
Because I mean, that was sort of the challenge with, that's a challenge that a lot of our authors have faced who are doing events on social media profiles that are that pull from their followers, right?
Right. It can seem like a lot of work for not a lot. It's hard to stay motivated sometimes in situations like that. I mean, you need to do it, but it's nice when the reward of getting traction for something, because we know this can feel like a slog sometimes, and we want you to have wins too.
Right. So the beauty of going after a Reddit AMA is that, again, it's really more about being interesting, and it's not about followers. And as you're thinking through this, you think, oh, I don't really know if I could do this. I mean, if you can find a tangible topic, I mean, obviously, if you've written nonfiction, that's pretty easy. So my AMA is going to be about everything about Amazon, because I'm getting ready to launch the Amazon Author Formula. And so once that book is up for pre-order, then I'm going to schedule this AMA, and we'll certainly let our listeners know when it's scheduled so y'all can hop on there if you're on Reddit and ask me anything. But start to think about what, if you've written fiction, like what is your what's the core of the book that you could potentially get a lot of questions about? Like maybe it's about the supernatural, or you know what I'm saying? Or I mean, really, there's an endless opportunity, I think, for the majority of authors out there listening to this. I mean, would you agree?
Oh yeah. I mean, this is one of those too where Penny and I talk about this a lot when we do, pitching events, things like that. We really do a lot of pre-show chatting and brainstorming to make sure that we're always framing what we're talking about so it makes sense and clicks for both fiction and nonfiction authors. And this one was it was so refreshing, I think, Penny, that when you brought this to my attention, like, should we cover this? Like, this sounds like, and I thought, oh my gosh, yes, because what a great opportunity for both fiction and nonfiction. We're not sitting here trying to, reverse engineer so it makes sense for everybody. And that, but this one really does make sense for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does make sense for everybody. And like I said, I mean, when you think about it, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I just don't know if I had anything to talk about. 83% of Americans want to write a book. So if you have nothing else to talk about writing a book. talk about what that experience is, how you published, talk about how how you prepped. If you've written historical fiction, for example, talk about the history part of your historical, some of the deep dives that you did. I mean, I've talked to authors who have done, or I've read rather, about authors who have done AMAs who have, who do deep dives into, um, you know, the, the lifestyle for the time period, the
Yep.
clothing they wore.
Hmm.
I talked to an author one time, and she said that she did talks at that time, so it wasn't necessarily related to Reddit, but she did talks based on all of the historical little factoids that people really love. Like, for example, during Civil War times, a woman could not sit on a chair that a man had just sat on. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know why that sticks in my head, but that's just like the craziest thing. People who love history, they eat that up, right?
Hmm.
So there's really no excuse that in order to do this. And you can certainly do so. If you're not familiar with Reddit, there's something called subreddits. And subreddits are these, like Amy was talking about, like she looks up her dogs, and I've looked up Cosmo because Cosmo's getting older. So I've looked up, dog aging and stuff like that. And I own a Subaru. I know this sounds really like super nerdy, but there's a Subaru Forester subreddit on Reddit. There's anything that you can think of, I guarantee you that there is a subreddit for it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why Reddit is so much I say easier. I'm doing this in air quotes. Sometimes I think than social media when it comes to authors getting creative, because there quite literally is something for everybody. Whereas on social media, I can understand why some authors go, I really don't have anything to say that is,
Yeah.
interesting on a more general, broader level. But that's the beauty of Reddit, is that you can quite literally nerd out with a group of people about anything.
Yeah. And if you spend a little bit of time on Reddit, so if we piqued your interest, spend a little bit of time on Reddit,
Yeah.
because I promise you right now, your interest is going to get piqued, and I think the wheels are going to start to turn in terms of what you can talk about. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I have no idea what I would, what I would discuss,
Mhm.
um, spend a little bit of time on Reddit and start looking up, you know, different subreddits and different topics and things like that. I think you will be amazed. And there is, and one of the things that I find too about Redditors is that they're very generous with information.
Yeah.
There are some people on there, you get it anywhere in social media. Again, technically Reddit's not really social media, but as with anything online, you always get these haters on there, but I find them very few and far between really on Reddit.
Yeah.
I don't,
I
go
agree.
ahead. Sorry.
No, I agree with you. That's interesting, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I find the same thing, that there may be differing opinions, but for the most part, those individuals, even if they don't agree, they're still really invested in whatever that topic is.
Yeah.
And they have a background in it. They spend a lot of time researching. They spend a lot of time talking to other people about this topic. So you really don't get a lot of the trolling for trolling's sake, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
Reddit is so detailed, and there are so many different spaces for whatever you're interested in. You really don't see the level of trolling like you do on social media. Well, people just say nasty things to say nasty things, or to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like people don't really go to Reddit for that reason. Like, they may not disagree with everybody on their subreddit, but it doesn't mean, but they're still really invested in it, if that makes sense. They're not just showing up to like drop little bombs in the conversation and then leave, you know?
Right, right, exactly. No, that's definitely, that's very true. So talk about, Amy, do you want to take the talking about pitching and
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Okay. So this is interesting. And, Penny and I we've done at least one show on using AI for things. And I think we've got another one cooking too, don't we, Penny?
Yes, we do,
Yes.
because I've found lots of fun AI prompts for authors. Again, I'm actually on, okay, I'm just going to admit this now. I'm on a chat GPT subreddit.
Oh, that makes sense.
And it's so weird. It's so weird.
No, but I bet it's super useful. And I wanted to mention it here because it does have some crossover here. I wanted to mention it both for, when we talk about coming up with ideas, like if you're, like you're sitting here thinking, what would I even talk about? Believe it or not, chat could probably be really helpful with that. Like if you give them the premise of your book, like give them some background information. And it's a great way to get outside of your own brain and get a different perspective. So ask chat or another AI platform what, current popular trending topics are around what you wrote. And even if it's fiction, talk about the scene, talk about where it's located, talk about, you know what I mean? Give a description of the main character's characteristics, things like that. And you'd probably be surprised at the suggestions you could get from chat in terms of what other people might want to discuss and how it relates to your book. But I just want to drop that one in there because it could also help with the pitch too. But it's a great tool for getting outside of getting out of your own way. Is that a good way to put it, Penny?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, it really is. It is a great tool for getting out of your own way. It really, because that's something, I think that's a lot of what we use chat for too, is just,
Yes.
yeah, because sometimes you just get too close to something. So I love that idea that you suggested.
Yeah, so use it to get out of your own way and kind of revive what is so cool and interesting about your process, your book, your topic, your area of expertise. Like dig into that because you might go, wow, I never thought about it that way, but look at all these great things it came up with that people are actually interested in that I forget about. But in terms of the pitch and the hook, this is so important. A really good Ask Me Anything is not a sales pitch. You are not showing up there to sell your book. A really successful Ask Me Anything will sell your book because of the experience that they have with the Ask Me Anything without you even having to say and here's where you go to get it on Amazon. You know what I mean? Like if you've given the participants a good experience, something interesting to sink their teeth into, something dynamic, they are going to be interested in checking out your book. That is just how this works. So don't focus on what should I talk about to sell my book or how am I going to sell the book or what do I need to say to make sure people buy my book? Like if you're focusing on that, the experience is probably going to be less than, so you really want to focus on the right things. It's kind of like hosting a party, right, Penny?
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to host an interesting party where people don't just sit on your couch and listen to you talk about yourself.
Right.
Come up with why, come up with something that has more depth. And I loved, this was from an example one.
Yes.
From the article. And I was just like, I want to be on this. Like, how did I not know this was happening? And now I need to also follow the subreddit because I'm like an old school, Poe geek. But this is the title. I wrote a book about Edgar Allan Poe, about how Edgar Allan Poe predicted the sinking of the Titanic. Ask me anything.
Right.
What? It's like, I have so many questions.
I have so many questions.
And
yes.
Honestly, yeah, in a lot of this too, for everybody listening, it's a lot of people will show up just to kind of see how it goes at first, and then they'll jump in. So just the title alone, I would show up for that, even if I didn't have a question in mind, because I'd want to see what other people are asking and I want to learn from what they're asking and what, the host is responding with. So that is crazy. So pique their curiosity, do something surprising, be a little controversial, go for something emotional. Don't do something basic because nobody's going to show up for basic. So lean into and this is in a very good way, like the clickbaity headline type titles for your Reddit, because that's what's going to get people to go, wait, what? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, you could also time your Reddit just in terms of if you want, so we talk about this in media a lot, where if you're pitching your book either to local or national media, you may want to align it with a particular calendar date, commemorative date, or observance, right? So that's another thing that you could potentially do as you're pitching the AMA, because basically what you're going to do is you're going to go to, so it's Reddit/AMA, and then you can pitch them in there. But take a look, again, if you're struggling for ideas, take a look at the calendar and see if there's something coming up that you can anchor your topic to make it even more relevant. So it dials into your book, but then, you're also anchoring too. And it can be something even as obscure as peanut butter and jelly day. I mean, if you wrote a cookbook or something, I'm just kind of throwing that out there. I
Oh,
too, though,
yeah.
want to attend that Edgar Allan Poe one.
I know. But that's brilliant, Penny, because it's all, I mean, the psychology behind the timing and the topic makes so much sense. So I love that you mentioned that because, and again, if there isn't something timely, then don't stress as if it's not going to work. But why not use that to your advantage? Because think about everybody's algorithms on social media and stuff like that. So if there is something that makes sense and it's timely and it's coming up for your topic, people are probably going to be seeing that in other places too. So what you're doing is you're jumping on the bandwagon of this something that's topical and timely that they're seeing on their social media. They might see it in a newsletter that they get or emails that they get based on certain shopping that they do, things like that. And if then they're on, they get the announcement that you have this Reddit going on too, that all works in your favor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those other things that they're seeing while they're online are also, in a way, psychologically adding value to what you're offering as well, because they can all play off of each other.
Right, exactly. And, as your pitch, so what I did when I pitched the AMAs, I basically just said, there's a book published every 8 seconds in this country. I can guarantee that a lot of your audience are going to be authors. And then I went into who I am, and it was a very short spiel. I mean, I think it was maybe 3 sentences. And I'd like to, geek out on everything Amazon related.
Mm-hmm.
And they wrote me back. They asked a couple of questions and they wrote me back and they said, okay, go ahead and do it. So whenever you're ready. Now, so again, you could do this in a subreddit because I actually also emailed a couple of subreddits, which I have not heard back from yet. And if you find a subreddit, you can find the moderator for that subreddit and you can certainly email them, definitely. The AMA, I like the Ask Me Anything because that's literally why people are there. They're searching through those, and they do show up very well in search anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you can pitch the AMA and you can search, I think it's r slash, it's r/AMA. So Reddit/AMA. One of the things that they did tell me when I got the confirmation for my AMA, and I don't have a date yet, they just allowed me to do it, is make sure that in your intro post, you really talk about how you're the expert shortly and succinctly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who you are, why you're doing this, what they can ask, and what your expertise is. Okay. So be really clear because, I mean, you don't want to disappoint people by getting a bunch of questions about something that you don't really have an expertise in. And depending on how broad your topic is, you want to narrow down as much as you can. Okay. The other thing that I think, and part of the reason why I didn't just accept the date and get a date going is, first off, I want to align it with the book pre-order, but you want to make sure that you're really ready to be, so clear the decks. Make sure that you are ready to answer questions because Redditors love responsiveness, being lively and engaged. So this isn't a question of setting up your AMA, going off to work, and then coming back in the evening and answering the questions.
Right.
Don't ghost your own AMA. So you want to make sure. So if you have to do it on a Saturday or a Sunday, because you could get 3 people or you could get 300. I'm betting that whole Edgar Allan Poe one is probably getting 3,000. Like,
Oh, yeah.
So it will really depend. And, you could also just join some AMAs and kind of see how they go and get a sense from them what everybody else is doing and, glean some ideas from that. Now, the other thing that I want you to consider too is take lots of screenshots. So good questions make good social media content after, and they also might even spark, like if you're doing author events or if you have speaking, great questions. Oftentimes, and at least they have for me and other speakers that I've worked with, they help to spark new speaker topics. And they may also give you new ideas for social media posts or blog posts or videos that you're doing or whatever, right? So grab as many screenshots, quotes, questions, just bank them for later.
Yeah. That's really smart.
Yeah, just to repurpose them um for just to repurpose them for other uses. um okay, so I think we covered everything under
The execution. Can I add one more thing, Penny?
no, go for it. Yes.
I even had to look it up now because as you were saying, when we start talking about this stuff, like in the moment, our brains start going like, ooh, what about this? What about this? What about this? So I did a quick search. And when you said, plan for when this is going to happen, you need to be ready. It's also great. I found out that because I was just curious when you mentioned going with the AMA thread and then also pitching some topical, subreddits and things like that. Go for all of it because it seems like the AMA thread, Reddit actually promotes those.
Yeah.
Which is another thing. So that's another major bonus if you actually get the approval for the official AMA thread, is that they will actually make sure that people on the platform see those, which is really great. And then this is cool. Like if you schedule it in advance, you can actually promote the date that it's happening.
Yeah.
And on Reddit, there's a remind me option too. So people that use Reddit a lot, they, like you said, they will go through and they'll kind of scan the AMA string to see what's coming up. And if it's in the future, they can set it up so they get reminded of something coming up. You know what I mean? So make the most of, if you decide you're going to do this, make the most of it. You know what I mean? Take advantage of all of those little extras, like the planning, sending people there, letting people know in advance that it's happening. Like we always say all the time, if you're going to do one thing, find 3 other ways that you can maximize on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
No, that's a great idea.
Yeah, make the most of every effort. So if you're gonna do this, and I hope a bunch of you do, and then write us and let us know how it goes, or let us know when your AMA is planned. But make sure you're taking advantage of all those other promotional opportunities to send people there and get the word out about it too.
Yeah.
Just like we do with everything else we talk about in terms of planning events. This is an online event. There's so many things you can do in advance of in-person and online events to kind of make the most of the opportunity.
Well, and because to Amy's point, so Reddit does promote their AMAs. They can live on the Reddit's front page and potentially get millions of views.
Crazy.
It's really is it's a hidden gem of an idea that I don't know why we don't hear more about this. I think
I know.
You know what I mean? It's very flashy to be on like TikTok or Instagram or whatever, but I'm telling you right now, Reddit is Reddit's a fabulous structure for this. So a couple of other things. Reddit does not like self promotion. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So things like, pushing, I mean, obviously you're there because of your book, but there's a way to structure answers where you're not saying things like, well, but if you read my book, and,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And then also not replying to some, like, if somebody asks you something that you don't know, just tell them that you don't know, right? So you're going to want to make sure to reply to all of them. Don't sound like a marketer. And that's something that I know is like, you feel like, okay, well, a lot of times if you get if an author gets an AMA, they might feel like I have so much pressure. Like I really want to sell a lot of books. I really want to do all the things. You want to make sure that everything is lined up so that your book is live or it's up on pre-order or whatever, that that your website's in the information so people can find you, but you really need to not sound like a marketing person. So you are there to give information. Mm-hmm. Okay. All you really need though to do this is Reddit account and a link to, like, go to bit.ly and get a shortened link to your to your website or your book. I mentioned your website before. If the URL is really long, you can create a shortened link for it or something. And then I would just say 2 to 3 hours of availability.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely. And you have control over, as the host of your AMA, you have control over how long you take questions for, not just that day, but even leaving it open for comments after the fact, you know?
Yeah.
So that's another, Penny, I love that you mentioned, like, if somebody asks a question, don't just pretend it's not happening, you know,
Right.
respond to it. And that even gives you the chance to say, you know, I don't know, but that's a fabulous question. I will get back to you. And you do have the option to reply to that person at a later date, you know, especially if it is something that you're like, you know what, that is a really great question. And I would have liked to answer that. You know what I mean? So make it personal, you know,
Right.
Also be sure to speak to these, because these are super fans of topics. These are diehards, hardcore people. So if you get them intrigued, like, this is gold, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It definitely is gold. And it is, like I said, it's a great and unique thing. And I don't know that that the AMA track, or the subreddit rather, is, won't let you do a couple, like if you do one really successfully and you had lots of responses and lots of people, messaging you on the Reddit, I don't know that they would not let you do a second or a third one, but I think it's definitely an overlooked opportunity to get potentially millions and millions of views to your topic. And I think that, just to kind of leave you with this, I mean, the success on Reddit is less about being famous and being self-promotional and much more about being interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a very in the world of social media, which again, Reddit really skirts kind of the fringes of social media. But in the world of social media, where everything is about being famous and being this or being that, Reddit's not about that. Reddit is really more about good information and being interesting. And it's part of the reason why Amy and I like to deep dive on there for various topics, both personal and professional. So,
yeah.
And I would really love, I mean, as Amy mentioned, let us know if you decide to do this and you get an AMA. We'd love to maybe even just be a lurker and kind of see how you do, but also pitch us your AMA. Like if you think about, oh my gosh, I want to do this.
I know. I'm so glad you said that. I was like, please send us your ideas. I would love to see some of your ideas.
Yeah. We would love to. And you know what? I will, if you send it to us or you get one, definitely send us your AMA ideas. But if you get one scheduled, we'll definitely mention it on the show and just send even more eyes to your AMA even after it's happened. Because the other thing about the AMA is that it still lives on Reddit. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't evaporate, which a lot of things that you do online just evaporate, right?
Yeah. That's a very good point, Penny. Even if it's closed for comments, I've read multiple threads that are no longer accepting comments that I've gotten great information from.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. But just remember, show up and be interesting and helpful. Leave your promotional hat at home, because basically that's obviously with Reddit, that's what you're doing anyway. But
they're too smart for that too. Reddit users, they're not going to fall for that.
Reddit users are really very, very smart about that. So I love this idea. I'm looking forward to my AMA. I will definitely let everybody know when it's going to be scheduled. As soon as the book is up for pre-order, we're going to do that. But very excited about this show.
So cool.
We love your show ideas. If this is your first listen, be sure to subscribe to the show so that you get notified. We drop a show every Friday into your podcast feed. There are contact details in the show notes. Send us your show ideas. Send us your show feedback. We love reviews. So wherever you listen to podcasts, please leave us a review as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.